Thursday night, National Basketball Association is back in our lives. It's been an interesting week so far, certainly some surprises, and not the least bit profitable for many of our members and contributors and founders. AP last night getting into the winner's circle, Bryce getting the 100K on FD. We've got a smaller slate as we expect to see during the season on Thursday nights, but particularly during the NFL season, because of course we've got a showdown tonight. The boys will have you covered at Rum Pure Sports, but we're going to focus and talk about this 4-game slate here in the association. DC, how has the early week of the NBA treated you? Certainly some blowouts there in the beginning opening night, some, I guess, interesting things with LeBron and Bronny playing together, maybe more interesting for them than anybody else, certainly anyone playing DFS. Yeah. But how's the week going?
Good. Happy to have basketball back. Been, like a little bit of a slow start, I guess. I've been just kind of dipping my toes a little bit in the NBA waters. I'll be honest, it's not something I follow like super, super closely during the preseason, at least this year, right? So it's kind of one of those things for me. It obviously depends on the sport, but it's like, all of a sudden NBA is here, right? And like it takes you, or at least takes me, JT, like a night or two, or I don't know, maybe even a week to kind of get back into the swing of it, to see these teams play, with their new NBA, these teams get kind of rearranged every offseason, get new data. I mean, just a couple of games and you can kind of start to see how the rotations are going to go, all that stuff. And so I'm just, you're re-familiarizing myself with the tools that I use and the process, trying to use SaberSim more this year, trying to rely on their projections, both ownership and, player projection wise, and, try to make the best plays on just a few teams to get started as the season progresses. It's a long, long season. I mean, we just got done, of course, with baseball, still got the World Series coming up, but we know, you don't have to go balls to the walls on day one if you're not quite ready. So that's been a little bit the case for me, but getting more into the swing of it. And excited for the NBA season here and excited for this slate as well.
Yeah, we're not done with baseball yet. We've still got the World Series, believe it or not, as we crest into November here. And speaking of the NBA season sneaking up on you, yes, guys and girls in the chat, I did not check my travel schedule. And so here I am on the road, not in a museum or in your grandmother's master bedroom being air. If I was coming from any of your relatives' bedroom, it would be your mother's. But we will get into the slate. Travis, I hope you're doing well. And nothing says the NBA is back than opening up the optimizer, popping up projections, and getting a bunch of 4-man Spurs stacks that you immediately have to go in and check and set the rules. So the NBA is back. We are blessed with the Spurs on this slate, as well as the Mavericks in the same game, no less. And I'm sure Oklahoma City is probably going to play 18 players as well. But how's the week going for you?
Yeah, JT, some of us baseball season just ended. Others of us, it ended a little bit earlier. So, sad that baseball's over, but Yankees Dodgers will be fun. And yes, Spurs nights, I know they're not your favorites. Like, you're not a big Greg Popovich guy. You're not a big Steve Kerr guy anymore either. I mean, 12-man rotations is definitely not what he did last night. So it's, we got to take note of these things. So the funniest one was the Pelicans. They had a really interesting rotation too. I mean, I think CJ McCollum played 29 minutes. Herb Jones went to the locker room and somehow played the most minutes. Like, it's, the streets are interesting right now, but hey, these are things we can take advantage of. We can take advantage of maybe the projections pushing something that might be wrong. We can take advantage of, something that we think is a, stand that you want to take. So maybe there's fragility in projections. You're like, why are these minutes the projected minutes? So there's a lot of things to discuss and look at. And, we'll dive in and talk about how to handle it.
Yeah, certainly early on in the season is a good time to take a really close look at the pricing and what can actually happen. So you see on this slate tonight, right, Victor Wembanyama, 10-7. God, I love Victor Wembanyama. Opening night, the first game for the Spurs, 10-7 against the Mavericks. Sure, you play them in tournaments, but there's definitely some landmines out there. And as I said earlier, congrats to those of you who have avoided those so far on this young NBA season. We'll get into the first game here. Travis, we'll stick with you. And there's been a lot of talk in the Discord today about this game, what the Celtics might do, what we could expect. The Celtics looking every bit like a team that is ready to head back to the NBA Finals this season, opening night against the New York Knicks. Now they go down to our nation's capital to take on the Washington Wizards. They are 14-point favorites here, 232.5 total. And Jason Tatum is going to be popular after his massive game on opening night. Jaylen Brown is going to be popular. But it sounds like some of the team here, like some of these other Celtics guys, thinking about what type of fight the Wizards may be able to put up. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, well, a lot of time positions matter, right? Especially on DraftKings specifically. I think positions definitely matter a bit when it comes to spending and everything like that. I know there's multi-position eligibility. If you look, there's definitely some spend down guards that we're going to talk about, and that will help us get the value to, or not the value, the salary to spend for Jason Tatum if we want to. And I was excited to see Jason Tatum's 2025 MVP campaign start off really nicely. I'm a big believer in him having a really good season. It just, he expected to have a really fun off season after winning a title. And dude, it's just not the guy you want to fuel. Like, you don't want to fuel Luka, Tatum, all these guys. Like, just for the most part, if they're going to win a title and then feel like they've been slighted, it's probably not going to end great for the league. So I like the spot for Tatum. The only thing you have to debate is these Celtics are going to be good plays if Washington pushes them, right? If Washington keeps this game close, a lot of Celtics will get there. The question is, will those guys get pushed? And how do we attack it? There's that quote from the offseason too, and I'm wondering how much that's going to drive Peyton Pritchard's ownership. But in the offseason, Jaylen Brown talked about it. He said, some games when we play like the Pistons, we just let Peyton Pritchard play a little bit more and control the rock to gain his confidence up, right? There's certain games that we have a plan of what we're going to do. So I'm sure.
Can you just say it just exactly like that again, just for the people?
That the people had that they had a plan to play Peyton Pritchard is like the guy.
The voice that you used. I mean, that was entertaining.
I don't remember what I did, but anyways, you cut me off, JT. So, but now my voice is gone. But Peyton Pritchard, I'm curious to see what everyone does with him in this spot. I think that's going to be really intriguing. His ownership is going to be something that I'm definitely monitoring. The Celtics are definitely a tough one to kind of pinpoint, but I just think you need to have exposure to this team on this slate. Like, they're just going to be good plays. Like, for instance, Derek White, Drew Holiday. I think those guys are solid. They're guys you want to mix and match on your team, so they're not guys you need to take huge stands on. You can make the case, like on FanDuel specifically, Tatum and Brown is a $2,000 difference, which seems absolutely crazy that they're a $2,000 difference. So maybe you go higher on someone like Jaylen Brown. For me, the Celtics aren't really a spot I'm trying to take a humongous stand on. I'm going to like Peyton Pritchard. I will get exposure to him. Hopefully the ownership does not get driven up too high. I think one play that we'll talk about coming up, I think he will kind of drive some of the ownership and keep it at least off Peyton Pritchard enough. So I think he's the best play in this game. I think Tatum's the best spend. And then I think we want to mix and match Derek White and Drew Holiday. I think like those are the two guys that I really like mixing and matching throughout my teams.
All right. DC, this first game, Boston, Washington, a lot of people thinking that, and now, of course, Sam Hauser has been ruled out, thinking that maybe some of these secondary Celtics players are the better plays in this game at their prices. But it is the NBA. Any team can compete on any given night. Maybe the Celtics have a little bit of a letdown after a massive performance against the Knicks opening night. Probably not likely. But what are your thoughts here in Washington tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's one game, but the Celtics, they looked awesome against the Knicks, right? I mean, they looked like they didn't skip a beat coming into the new season, which, you know, if you watched a bunch of basketball yesterday or you watch it tonight or tomorrow, you're going to see a lot of teams that are trying to figure it out or playing sloppy. You know, it's a very, very short preseason, and teams kind of have to gel as the year goes on. I mean, the Celtics, outside of Porzingis, who they've kind of proven they don't necessarily need, they got everybody back, right? Like they know who they are. They got the same coach. They got running the same rotations they played last year. Everybody knows their role. And it's a tough team when they're almost fully healthy like they are now. It's a tough team, I think, to like pin down where the production is going to come from in a confident manner, right? You can look out the matchups, but these guys can all shoot. They can all handle the ball. And so my role with the Celtics in general, and I think that's true on a 4-game slate, I want exposure to these guys, but I don't see a player here that's, the big stand of the night, anyone that's like super under projected. I kind of want I don't know, 2 Celtics on most of my teams because they're probably going to play well. They're probably going to put up 125, 130 points against, let's be frank, I mean, this Wizards team looks horrible, right? The Celtics should win this game by 15 to 20 points and have kind of productive fantasy days across the board. Who exactly, if it's going to be Tatum or Brown or Holiday or Pritchard or White or, even Horford and Cornette, I think are reasonable plays at their price point. So I wish I had a stronger take on the Celtics, but I think their projections all look pretty good, and the ownerships, at least according to Saber, kind of look in line with their projections. So this isn't a team that's going to be the first players into my lineup. It's a team that I'm going to find the guys I like that I do want to take a stand on from other games and fit these Celtics in my lineups kind of wherever they fit, if that makes sense to you.
Makes a ton of sense because, as you said, yes, the Celtics are going to score points. They're going to score likely a lot of points, but really difficult, as you mentioned, to pinpoint exactly who is going to do it. Of course, price tag is up there now for Jason Tatum, and certainly motivated. Certainly seemed that way opening night. We'll move on and stick with UDC.
We didn't talk much about the Wizards, or at least
we should. We should, because they do have a couple of value plays. They do have a couple of plays in particular, and Carrington and Bilal Coulibaly, who
make Mangone start with Carrington, because I want to hear Mangone's take on Mr. Carrington over there, because he's projected to be the highest owned player on the slate, right? At least that's what Saber has right now.
Travis.
Yeah, that's like a big conversation point, right? I mean, regardless of if you there might be someone to oh, he's a bad player. It's a conversation. That is like a big key on the slate. So why are we playing Carrington? Are we playing Carrington because he's a good play? Or are we playing Carrington because he's an okay play and it gets me Luka, right? What are we doing it for? Or are we doing it because he gets Jokic and all these studs? A lot of the reason why we're doing it is because of the studs that we want. That's plain and simple. I think you can look for other values if you want to. We want starting lineups too. I don't know if I mean, who knows? Maybe he starts, maybe he doesn't. Who knows?
I don't think so, but
I don't think so either. But the whole reason you're playing him is kind of what you do for your full lineup. And just to kind of talk up the playbook a little bit, if you look at some of the stuff we have on the playbook right now, all of it is shooting towards, playing a lot of these studs, right? You want to play a bunch of these studs. Carrington is someone that's going to be pushed a ton. You could see a Julian Strother who's being, who's obviously everyone likes on this slate a little bit. And obviously we'll get to Julian Strother. But the point is, we are considering these cheapies not because they're good plays. We are considering them because of what they do for our full lineup, because of who they get onto our teams. Also, it does help that, if I am going to take a cheap option, maybe it's in a game that's a blowout and the starters don't play in the fourth quarter. And then that's the opportunity where he can get more of that run. That's really the bet that I think is happening here. And I'm okay with betting on that, or maybe looking for even pivots off of that within the game. That's one reason why I think Peyton Pritchard's going under owned, is because people are just loading up on Carrington. And again, I don't think he's a bad play, but is he the greatest chalk we've ever seen? Here's a great example. You guys remember Johnny Davis? Johnny Davis chalk days never went well. And I know he's on the same team, but the point I'm getting at is we just can't absolutely trust all of these plays. You know who I might be able to trust, who's getting some ownership, but not as much? Bilal Coulibaly. I know he's 4.2 and that matters. I 100% understand that matters. And there's AP in the chat saying, why not both for all these guys? I get it. I'm just trying to make the case that you have to decide what is Carrington's ownership. If you think he's going to be 60.
Well, let me cut you off and go, and I'll give what Saber has for the numbers for Carrington right now. They've got him. He's 3K. You can play him at point guard or shooting guard. They've got him projected for 19.26 to be exact, fantasy points, which, according to point per dollar, does put him as the highest projected value on the slate. That puts him at 6.42. next highest player on the slate, according to SaberSim, is 5.77 value, right? So a significant gap from Carrington to Jeremy Sochan is who they have got number 2. Whether or not you agree with the projection or maybe even the ownership, okay, that's what Saber has. And listen, I'm like I said, I'm going to try to trust them right now when I'm trying to figure out what's going on. The thing I will say, man, going one, Carrington is a very, very unproven player, and I don't think we know how many minutes he's going to get, right? I do think there's a lot more volatility in that projection. It seems high to me, right? 19.3 for a guy where we don't know the minutes are going to be there. He's probably not a very good player in the NBA. And frankly, he's got to go against the Celtics, who are a good defensive team. It's not like they're going to, sure, maybe he could get there in garbage time or something. But for a player that is going to be, again, according to Saber, 56% owned, highest owned guy on the slate by almost a factor of 2, it's just a matter of, do you want to go there? And I'm playing 3 lineups. I mean, for sure, I'm going to have him on 1, and I don't know, maybe 2. JT, your thoughts on Carrington? Because it is, I think, a pretty big decision on the slate.
Well, first of all, I'm impressed with the factor of 2 product there that you talked about.
Yeah, I've been studying the math books and the
mathematics was very exciting.
Is that what you were doing in the woods? You were just had a book out reading about math?
Yeah, got the old algebra book outs from high school.
He's working on quotients. But here's what I'll say. A couple of things, right? On Washington, that point, probably one of the most volatile teams in terms of rotation last season was the Washington Wizards,
yes.
Wes Unseld Jr., the quality. The point Travis makes is also valid that, especially early season NBA, if you want to fit in the guys who you know are going to produce, and we're going to talk about those guys in certainly some of those guys in the next games. Let's say you wanted to get Tatum and Brown in there. Of course, Tatum and Brown in the winning lineup on the $15 on Monday night. That was only a 2-game slate. It's not going to matter as much. It's not going to matter as much because it's much harder with larger rotations earlier in the season, fewer minutes. Before we came on, we were talking about CJ McCollum and the Pelicans rotation last night that disappointed a lot of people. Not AP, of course, but when you look at that and you say this guy's 3K, right? Look, Bryce won 100K last night with KJ Martin, who was very popular on FanDuel. He got less than 10 points. It's the team, as Trav said, that he puts around him. Now, the difference, and it's actually not a difference because, as you saw with AP's lineup with Dyson Daniels, there are pivots, but you've got to get those pivots right. And maybe Julian Strother's that pivot. Don't know that he is. Right? We expect maybe a larger rotation there, and that's why some guys here like him. So I think in terms of when you see a player like that early in the season, again, it's also a 4-game slate, so it's not like there's 10 games where we can choose from. But a 10-game slate, I think that's chalk you fade, right? Very clearly, unstable rotation, young player, don't know what's going to happen. This one, I'm actually fine with it. You're not going to go locking him in. But to the extent that you're satisfied with your lineup around him, I think he's fine. You're not, as you guys have said, you're not playing him because you have massive conviction that he is the second coming of Michael Jordan. Other thoughts here on the Wizards?
No, I mean, I think it's really just looking at the cheap guys. That's really how I'm handling it. I don't mind taking shots on like Koulibaly and some of these other options and just kind of, gambling on it a little bit.
Can I interest you in one Jordan Poole, Mr. Mango?
No, I'm definitely not high on Jordan Poole. Like, I think there'll be spots to play Jordan Poole. I just don't think this is it, right? With Drew Holiday and Derek White chasing him around all game. It just doesn't seem ideal. How about Jordan Poole against the Pistons or the Hawks? That sounds more appealing.
He'll still let you down in those games, but yeah, I do agree with the general sentiment.
Yeah, I'd rather be let down in those spots, not as much.
Or Jordan Poole against the Spurs, who conveniently are the next game up here, DC. San Antonio heading into Dallas. Dallas 8.5-point favorites, a 227.5 total. Of course, we've got some changes for the Dallas Mavericks. Klay Thompson is on the Dallas Mavericks now. I'm sure that's very exciting to a lot of people. But it is a game where you have Luka, you have Kyrie, you have Wembanyama. Again, I think personally, yes, Wembanyama's in my pool. I'm playing 20 lineups on this slate only, but he's not very highly exposed just because of the price, because of what I expect with the rotation early in the season. This has never been a spot where the Spurs are going to play guys a whole bunch of minutes here, but he's obviously a massive fantasy point per minute producer. What are your thoughts here on the Spurs and the Mavericks?
Yeah, I guess I'll disagree. Wembanyama is this is a guy I want to ride with. This guy as often as possible. I think he is like just. It's
do you remember though? Everybody played him opening night last year, and he played like 23 minutes. I don't think we see 23 minutes here, but go on.
I'll take the over on 30 minutes for Victor Wembanyama in this game. I think the Spurs.
Go on.
Slide on in, JT.
Go
on. I just think Wembanyama is like he's going to be he's going to break fantasy basketball is what I think he's going to do. I'm not saying for sure that that's going to happen tonight, but I think by the end of the year, I think he's easily going to be the highest priced player on a night-to-night basis, higher than Luka, higher than Jokic. I think his combination of, clearly the biggest athletic freak I think ever to play in the NBA with the shooting skills, the basketball IQ. Did you see the interviews with him where he was like talking about how he kind of like lost respect for the guys who don't train the way they should in the offseason? To me, this guy is like he's just like a robot that has like if you did a create a player in NBA 2K before he existed, like a 7-7 guy who can bomb from three, who's pretty durable, like who's going to lead the league in blocks and steals. And now I love what the Spurs did pairing him with Chris Paul, who obviously, has had his disappointments and has lost some explosiveness. He's not the scorer he once was, but he's still arguably the smartest point guard in the entire league. And I think he is going to set up Wembanyama to absolutely smash. Nobody can stop him from getting off his three at his height, especially playing with CP3. I think he's going to bomb from three. I think he's going to get easy, put back dunks. He could lead the league in rebounds, blocks, steals, everything for Wembanyama. I still do think he will be more volatile, JT. I think maybe this is what you're getting at on a night-to-night basis than a Luka or a Joker perhaps is. But I think when it's all said and done, he is going to pace the field and 70-plus, 80-plus fantasy point performances. I think they're going to be coming fast and furious for Wembanyama. So he's going to be a guy, until I see otherwise, which could happen. I want to ride with this guy right now, Wembanyama. And I love pairing him with Chris Paul. It's kind of a guess at this point. I think they're going to play a lot of minutes together. And I think CP3's big games are going to come on Wembanyama's big scoring nights where CP3's racking up 10, 11, 12 assists. Those two are just getting it done, possession after possession, which frankly, I think they can do against the Mavericks, against Kyrie and Luka and Klay Thompson in the backcourt. I don't think those guys are going to be able to stop the CP3 Wembanyama two-man game that I think is going to dominate the Spurs offensive possession. So right off the bat there, two of my core plays, Paul, Wembanyama. I'm in on this duo tonight and going forward. So I guess I'll start it off with that.
Travis, DC is high on Wembanyama. And again, season long, yes, high on Wembanyama. It's more so the situation here. He's also high on Chris Paul. Doesn't sound like he's all that high. Again, the prices, I guess the price for Kyrie is probably the best on the Mavericks. Luka's price is about what you expect to see.
It's really hard to fit Wemby and Luka. You can do it, but I'm choosing Wembanyama, I guess, as my stud tonight.
You're choosing, if you're doing that, you're playing Carrington, you're playing Strother, you're playing another one of these guys.
You're basically forced into the same lineup that everybody else wants to do that. So I think it's, for me at least, just one of the 10K plus guys in my lineups tonight. Just one per lineup.
Travis, thoughts here on the Spurs and the Mavericks?
Yeah, the Spurs are definitely an interesting spot to discuss here on this slate. So for one, I'm kind of last year I became kind of a big SoCan guy. I just think his fantasy upside is really strong. So I'm definitely going to play him as a value at 4.6K. I think he's worth it. So I'm definitely interested in him. Wemby as a spend is intriguing. So the thing that I definitely noticed on this slate was I think everyone's gravitating to a couple to a couple like studs. And just so you guys can understand like how I like to read the situation and use cash games to help with my knowledge in tournaments, look at the playbook. I have Luka as a core. I'm on the cash stuff. I have Jokic number 2, Tatum number 3, and then it's Wemby, SGA, and Edwards. I just put them as pool plays because they were on a couple teams here and there, but they weren't guys that were, going to be getting a lot of exposure to. Those are clear guys that are just going to be under-owned in tournaments compared to these other studs. Now you have to decide, hey, is he going to be worth it or not? You are going to get low ownership on Wemby tonight versus Jokic. No doubt about that. I think if you do get the upside from him, man, it could absolutely shoot out. We know against Dallas, it could be a really good back and forth game. You could make teams, I know Glock is probably doing this, a little Wemby and Luka combination as like a game stack. I don't think it's crazy to do that. Throw in Shokan as well. I think he's a really good value, though, in this game. I'm definitely not as excited as CP3 as DC is, but I'll just say this. I get why he's doing it, right? It's probably just not for me. I just think there's other point guards that I'm kind of getting to, and I'm not getting to that mid-tier build as much. I want to get as many studs into my lineup as I can. We saw studs dominate last night. I believe we're going to see studs dominate tonight. And I think Wemby's fine. I think if you had to tell me, hey, pick between SGA, Ant, and Wemby, how would you rank them? For me, I probably have it ranked Wemby 1, Ant 2, and SGA 3. That's how I would rank it over on DraftKings. And I know we're not on those games, but I think that's an important way to mention how I'm handling Wemby. So I clearly like him as a star, but I like him as my favorite contrarian star. When it comes to Luka, Jokic, and Tatum, those three are clearly above Wemby.
All right, fair enough. Mark K congratulates us on the success of the channel. Thank you, Mark K. Thanks for stopping by. We're happy you're here. Scott Foster is trying to start a fight. We're going to ignore that, Scott. That's not what we're about in this channel. And Travis, yes.
Yeah, let me call out the Spurs starting lineup. It was Paul, Champagny, Harrison Barnes. Everyone loves Harrison Barnes, Sokan, and Wemby. So that's the starting lineup.
Who was the second player?
Champagne or whatever, Champagne, I don't know, whichever.
That lineup sounds like a lot of CP3 and Wemby pick and roll to me, just being honest. The
lineup only excited DC.
What's that?
The lineup only excited DC. It made him happier about his.
It does make me happy. Yes, indeed.
KT, are we
going to do Harrison Barnes ISO in the post? No, it's going to be CP3 and Wemby.
I don't believe Harrison Barnes is in my pool. I have to go double check, and if he is, I'll take him out.
Are we gonna talk about the Mavs next? Are we still staying in this game?
Go ahead.
You finished and you didn't mention a single Maverick, but yes, please.
I thought we were going game like team by team, so that's my apologies. I didn't understand that. So we're only 30 minutes into the show that I finally figured that out, but that's okay.
No, 4 games. We're not even halfway through. No problem. Go on.
What do you mean? I'm about to finish this up really fast, and we'll be halfway there. Settle down, okay? Calm down there. Luka is the number 1 stud on the slate. He's the guy that I want to jam onto my teams. I do think Kyrie is a solid leverage play at 7.5K. And then a big debate, I think, on this slate, and I actually think it's a really big debate because of the ceilings they provide, Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford, which I just feel like I'm playing roulette of who's going to get into foul trouble against Wemby. That's one of the issues that I'm having there. But I do think those guys have really nice.
Do we know who they're starting? Are they starting Gafford?
We'll see. I mean, you never know. I can't trust Jason Kidd to do the right thing ever. I mean, he looks just like JT. So, I mean, how can you trust that man? But yeah, that's
he looks. First of all, we look nothing alike. That's a disgusting. That's a disgusting comparison. We can move on.
But I think they both have ceilings. That's my point. Like I'm just saying. I think you have to have them in your tournament pool. I
think, at least for me, at the same price point, right? Gafford and pretty close. I mean, give me the youngster who had a big playoff performance over Gafford, who we know who he is. I'll take Lively over Gafford, no matter who's in the starting lineup. Frankly, I think. Yeah.
I kind of don't disagree with AP's opinion, by the way. Just the bench dude could be in a better spot.
I think they're going to sacrifice Gafford to Wemby, and then Lively is probably the guy you want. Is my expectation.
That's what I think happens too, and then Lively closes.
Daniel Gafford, sacrificial lamb. Very nice. Very nice. DC, is there anything else you wanted to say about the Mavericks? I didn't realize that maybe I give you enough time to talk about them?
Yeah, you did give me enough time. And you know what? I could have just brought them up on my own. So I don't
could have. You had that option. I'm glad that you know.
You want to be proactive on the show.
When you have the floor to just talk about what you want instead of being a bitch and complain. All right.
So shut your mouth, old man. Okay, we got breaking news. Starting lineups. Jordan Poole, Carrington, Koulibaly, Kuzma, Alex Sarr, starting center. So there you go.
Oh, that is very exciting. All right.
That is big news. The Alex Sarr stuff is going to shake stuff up for sure.
So, yes, it will. Yes, it will. All right. Travis, we'll stay with you. This is an opportunity here to talk about both teams in this game. It's Minnesota heading into Sacramento. Sacramento favored by 1.5, 222 total here. What are your thoughts here? It seemed like you, at the very least, do not think that DeMar DeRozan is going to get anywhere near a triple-double. But what are your thoughts on the plays in this game?
Yeah, and Uncle Tease, I might call you one in a second, so settle down over there. But Ant Edwards, 8.8K. I think he's a good stud to spend for on this slate for sure, but I have him second. SGA is probably the guy I'm going to be lower on. I do want to talk about a couple things here. I think Julius Randle is someone I'm going to be low on, I think, right now. I just don't like his role on this team. I'm going to lower his projection. He is definitely someone that I am not interested in. Dante DiVincenzo. He's someone that I think has a ton of upside at 5.2K. I think DiVincenzo is definitely someone that you want to be kind of raising his projection and taking a bet on. Fire. Jeez. Naz Reid is another play that I like. I liked him the other day. I'm going to like him here again. So I think those are the main three Timberwolves I want to target in tournaments. Ant Edwards, Dante DiVincenzo, again, I love his upside. Naz Reid, 5.1K. He is someone else I'm looking at. When it comes to the Kings, dude, you add someone like DeMar DeRozan to this team, and the ball's just going to stop with a lot of these guys. I'm a little nervous about that addition. I mean, I think if they find a way to make it work, great. But are they going to make it work today on October, whatever day it is, 24th? Probably not. I don't think this is a great spot for any of these Kings. I want to be very underweight on them. Malik Monk, I don't mind in that role, coming off the bench, 5K. If he does get hot, hey, the ceiling is there at the price. So I think overall, he is definitely someone that I have some interest in, but after that, I'm really going to be very low on this game. Like, I don't really want to get that much exposure to Domantas Sabonis. I don't think De'Aaron Fox is a stud that I really want to spend on here in this spot. Like, this just feels like a game where it's just taking those four guys that I mentioned, really, and then moving on.
All right, DC. Travis, not as high on this game. What are your thoughts here, Minnesota and Sacramento?
Yeah, took the Wolves one whole game to get my Wolves PTSD back on action. They trade Cat. I'm like, yeah, good trade. Get Cat out of here. Get Randall in. Let's play the Lakers on stupid LeBron and Bronny night. I'm all excited for the new era of the Wolves, and they put up a stinker. And it takes one game, JT, where I'm back out on the Wolves. I think
you'll be back in.
Oh yeah.
You've got a multi-entry pass to that bandwagon.
Yes. I'll be back on and off like 7 more times over the course of the season. But I am with Mangone in general on this game. I just don't see the Randall fit with the Wolves is I don't know. I think it could take some away from Anthony Edwards. I think it's going to take Randall some time to find his role in the team. So I'm kind of with Mangone. I don't find myself gravitating towards too many Wolves. The cheaper guys, Naz Reid, I think is fine. I have no problem with Gobert at 7,200 or even DiVincenzo at 52. Probably those three: Gobert, Reid, DiVincenzo would be the guys I'd be most likely to play. Spending elsewhere other than Edwards and Randall tonight. And then the Kings. I mean, kind of similar to the Wolves. The addition of DeMar DeRozan, it's a little bit strange on this team. It's not that they were lacking scoring, right? Fox, Sabonis, Keegan Murray, Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter can shoot. All these guys can put the ball in the basket, and then you get DeMar DeRozan, who, that's like clearly his number one skill is just scoring the basketball, which I'm just not sure the Kings really needed that. So I could see this offense, at least for the time being, taking a little bit of a step back while they try to figure out how to use all these pieces together. I think it's a team that could, at least I'll be betting on it, disappoint a little bit early on until maybe some of these prices come down, until injuries start to pop up a little bit for the Kings. I think this is mostly a game I will be off. And also the Wolves, are going to be probably, if they're going to be any good, they're going to be a fantastic defensive team. They were last year. They got embarrassed a little bit by the Lakers. Game 2 now for the Wolves. They're going to be locked in defensively, if nothing else, in this game. I could see this game being, it's got a decent total, but I'm maybe expecting this game to be a little bit more of a slog than maybe the market does.
Definitely a good bounce back spot. DC Travis Riz's Collectibles is interested in playing Keegan Murray. I think I have a couple of shares in my pool, but not an overwhelming amount. He's got 5,500 left, and he's landing on Keegan Murray. Thoughts there?
He seems completely reasonable for me as a last guy in, and at that price point position, he can get hot. He does have upside. So, yeah, if that's your final piece, I think Keegan Murray absolutely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he's not bad. I mean, if you look at, again, this is where I revert back to the playbooks. The format showing everything on it. I like the way it looks. Forward's not amazing today, especially power forward, and it just feels like you're playing some plays that you don't love. You know what I mean? That's one reason I do like Jeremy Socan. That's why, PJ Washington isn't bad. Keegan Murray, Aaron Gordon. These aren't guys that I love their, all of their ceilings, but they just feel like, hey, I get a little bit of salary for a guy who's going to play a ton of minutes, and I save value.
You're trying to get your 25 or 30 fantasy points right there, right, man? Going kind of in that mid-range and just put it elsewhere. Yeah.
Yes, that's a lot of what's going on there. So that's kind of the overall thought process on the position. And that's why Keegan Murray, sure, last guy in, I don't completely hate it. But like I said, I'm definitely trying to look at other spots. I'm looking to get some cheaper options in there. That way I can get a lot of these studs on my lineups.
So, Travis, it sounds like, and we're going to head to the next game here, we're going to stay with DC, but it sounds like if you could get Aaron Gordon, you would play him over Keegan Murray.
Yeah, I think I'd play Aaron Gordon over Keegan Murray. I mean, they're going to need Aaron Gordon for sure a lot in this matchup. I also feel like, listen, if Aaron Gordon wants to get that big contract he's looking for, he's going to start doing.
He already got it. He just signed it.
Oh yeah, you're right. He did just get it. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, he did. It was pretty recent. But point I'm getting at though is dude, this team, they need help. He needs to do more. He can't just do what he's been doing on this team. I do think they're going to have to rely on his ball handling a little bit more, where he runs that point with the second unit some. And hey, that's when we like him in fantasy. So I don't think that is terrible. So the other guys I really like in this game, obviously Jokic, really good spend up option that we want to consider here. Russell Westbrook, he's only 5K. I am willing to bet on playing some Russell Westbrook in his upside today. I do not think he is a bad option. SGA, like I said, he's probably my lowest superstar on this slate that I'm looking to get to, so I won't be super high on him. Caruso and Wiggins are two cheap options I want to talk about at the guard and forward position. I think they provide a lot of value to help get these stars and scrub builds. They're going to play on the court a lot. I think Caruso is going to be needed defensively. I think they could go to Wiggins a little bit, who's 3.4K. Interesting pivot off of someone like Carrington. Yes, he will have some ownership, don't get me wrong, but Carrington will be the highest owned guy. Lou Dort's another great example of that at 4.5K. And honestly, I think this Denver defense is going to struggle a little bit more without KCP. We're going to see them get into more shootouts. And I think this is a game that has the ability to be a higher scoring game. And I think it's going to be way higher scoring than the game that we just talked about. So I like some of the value that we can grab in this game and then some of the studs that we just talked about.
DC, we always love ball handling in our fantasies. In this game, the Thunder and the Nuggets, a 227.5 total. Nuggets favored by 2. Thoughts here? You do have Strother, who I mentioned earlier, someone who the guys are high on in this game. Caruso's cheap, but he's also going to be pretty popular, it seems like. And, of course, we know that the Thunder are going to play a larger rotation than any of us would like. But what are your thoughts here, Nuggets and Thunder?
Yeah, definitely like this game better than Wolves and Kings overall. I won't end up with much Jokic just because I'm playing Wembanyama, but Jokic is second for me. He is still ahead of Luka. If I was going that direction, people, I don't know how much you need to say about Jokic. I do like SGA quite a bit here as kind of a second stud, a little bit of a discount from some of the top guys, like his individual matchup against the Nuggets best among the, kind of the OKC main guys. Jalen Williams, I assume, is going to be guarded by Aaron Gordon for most of this game. So I don't like that I really like Jalen Williams as a player, but I don't love the individual matchup today. I definitely prefer to go to Gordon himself. We talked a little bit about him, but I like him quite a bit as kind of almost like a glue guy piece of your lineups, like he's a glue guy for the Nuggets, where, that $6,100 price tag on DraftKings, I think he's $63 on FanDuel. He did just get that big contract, which, there is some uncertainties going into these teams' first game of the season, but he's feeling good and the team's confident in him. And I think there's a little bit extra security. His first game at home coming off the big payday, right? You would think, going to get his minutes, and I would expect him to play well. So Aaron Gordon, a guy that I think fits a lot of lineups. And then, Caruso, just looking at this OKC roster, and this kind of happens a lot with Caruso, no matter where he goes, he does everything pretty well, and he finds himself playing a lot of minutes. It's just kind of hard to get him off the court because he makes the team better when he's out there on whatever team he's on. And I expect that to be the same thing for the Thunder. I think he's a discount at 4,800. Again, maybe not the highest upside guy in the world, but I think he's going to get 30-plus minutes. I think he's safe for 25 fantasy points, can play multiples of positions, all that stuff. So Caruso, Aaron Gordon, SGA, the main guys I'm looking at here. No problem with a guy like Strother. I think he's a pretty good punt down there at 3,200 as well.
Travis, you playing any four-man stacks on this slate? It's a 4-game slate, but any four-man stacks in your pool?
Yeah, that actually is a good question because I haven't looked at that yet. I don't want to play four-man Spurs stacks. I'll tell you that, JT. Let's start there. No four-man Spurs stacks.
That's a given. Yeah.
I'm just making sure. You never know. But I would say the Celtics are a four-man I can get behind. That would be one four-man stack I would not mind. I'm trying to think of the other teams that make sense. Like, I don't think the Nuggets could make sense as a four-man stack. I don't think that makes any sense. I could see routes where the Mavericks work as a four-man stack. Specifically, I think you could do Luka and Kyrie just because Kyrie's price at 7.5 is just too cheap for a shooting guard like that. And then one of those centers, maybe even both. I don't think they both will, but maybe just one of them and then a PJ Washington. Like, I think that could work. Again, I think it's stretching it a little bit. Obviously, no Washington four-mans, no Kings four-mans, no Timberwolves. And then I'm trying to think if you can make the Thunder. I think the Thunder is the only other four-man I would really consider, and it would be Wiggins, Caruso, like Dort, Jalen Williams, I guess, or maybe a Chet. So, yeah, that's kind of the only ones I'm thinking of. It's probably mainly looking at the Celtics. The Celtics is the key four-man, and I think if you do that Celtics four-man, it's probably paired with some Peyton Pritchard, two of the mid-tier guys, and then one of the studs between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
Not four of those starters. DC, any four-man stacks for you on this slate? You said you're playing 3 lineups, so I figure that's a pretty easy question.
Yeah, I did not end up with any. The Spurs, I think, would be the best, or the team I would be most likely to four-man. I think you can play CP3, Wemby, Socan is 4,600, and then Champagny is, I believe, 3,900. I think those two guys are cheap enough to pair. And I do think they are correlated minutes-wise, too. We know Popovich can be kind of, I don't know what the word, rug pullish or inconsistent with the minutes. But I do think if the starters play well, I do think those guys could all play 30-plus minutes and all get there. So the Spurs would be the most likely team I would be willing to do it with. But no, on my 3 teams, no four-man stacks for me.
So you are advocating for four-man Spurs stacks on opening night for them?
If I had more teams, I would have four-man Spurs stacks, yes.
All right.
Yeah,
all right. All right.
By the way, JT, since I don't want to advocate for that, I do want to advocate for the next show coming up. We have a watch playback show. JSU told me he wanted me to mention this. What is Viner saying? You get behind a lot of watch playback. They're going to be watching the NBA games while talking about the NFL slate. Maybe they'll drop some NBA nuggets in for you guys as well. So after this show, go head on over to Watch Playback, Run Pure Sports. It'll be tweeted out. You'll be able to find it. Go find us there. Go hang out with Big T JSU. Watch the games. Set up your account if it's not set up so you can watch it while they're talking about the NFL slate coming up. So, hey, Run Pure Sports is hot right now, and hopefully we can continue the run tonight.
I'm jealous. I love hanging out with Big T and JSU. So go ahead. All 670 plus of you get on over there into the playback. We'll do some plays of the day, and then we'll get out of here unless you guys have any other thoughts on this slate that we haven't covered.
I think we should circle back to the Wizards with their starting lineup. We did mention what it was.
Carrington and Sarr are the two unknowns that we know now are in the starting lineup. DC, what does that do for you? Because you seemed a little lower on Carrington. I'm guessing this moves you up on him. What about Sarr?
Yeah, so I'll say what SaberSim did. They moved, I mentioned Carrington's projection previously. I think it was at 19.3. They moved it to 22.8 for Carrington. So fairly significant bump with him in the lineup with all their adjustments. That puts him further ahead in terms of the value column, if that projection is correct. And then they did move his ownership up substantially as well. They've now got him more than 2 times factor, JT, as the highest owned player on the slate, sitting at
a factor of 3. Do we see a factor of 3?
Not quite a factor of 3, but almost a little 2.5x there. Yeah, they've got him at nearly 75% ownership, JT, for Carrington, which, frankly, that number is probably light, is my imagine. I imagine it comes in even higher. That's normally what happens. People see a 3K starter and they say, can't miss.
And look, normally you can't, because even if he doesn't go crazy in that time, he's now a better bet to come close to paying off that salary, 6-7x, than he was on the bench. You really need the blowout.
And listen, you could still win with him if he does. But he could easily get single-digit fantasy points here.
So there's an argument that with the starters, he'll have less usage, right? I mean, that's the argument you can.
And they could get blown. I mean, they probably should get blown out by the. I mean, but listen, this is a young team. Like he could be in there to close the game in a blowout. I mean, we don't know what they're going to do. So obviously he's a better play. I mean, projection-wise in the starting lineup, there's no question about that. Is it that much of a better play to justify, another 20% ownership? I think that's up for debate. So I'm keeping him on one of my 3 lineups, just what I'm doing personally.
Yeah, he's 6K on DK and 5K on FanDuel. I much prefer him on FanDuel if I had to pick one. So you're
talking about Sarr. We were talking about Carrington.
Oh, sorry, I was talking about Sarr.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Because Sarr is the next question. I'm going to start for the Wizards here.
Carrington's a great play for sure. Like, no doubt. I agree with everything on that. The Sarr stuff is interesting because he's 6K on DK and 5K on FanDuel. And honestly, at 5K on FanDuel, much better play in my opinion than the 6K on DK. The 6K on DK makes it a little bit more difficult, and just the pricing and how I'm building lineups, I just don't love Sarr still. So I think FanDuel totally green light. DK, not as much for me.
All right. One question here. Lyles or Tillman, GPP DK. I don't even think I have any of those guys in my lineups. Guys, you have a lean on Lyles or Tillman?
I would lean Tillman if you force me to pick with the blowout run, because he's such a good fantasy point per minute producer. And in that matchup, you're just hoping he limps his way there. So I think it's firmly Tillman for me. But again, I don't love those plays.
Okay.
It would be Tillman for me, but I don't have either of those guys.
Correct.
Yeah, I know. And again, in 150, things may be different. I don't have them in the 20 I'm playing. We'll start with the plays of the day. I'll go first. And I've said I am I don't disagree with DC in terms of the concept of what the Spurs can do. I just wonder if this is a slate, and I'm looking around at these higher price guys and trying to gauge what the real ceiling is for these guys in these matchups. For many of them, the first game of the year, and I happen to end up on a lot of Anthony Edwards at 8,800 as a bounce back spot here. Going to be motivated going into Sacramento, so Anthony Edwards is going to be my play of the day. He is right around my highest owned, higher priced player, taking shots on the other guys, the Lukas, the Jokic's, the Wembys. DC, will go to you. It sounded like maybe we know who your play of the day is, but if you can, go ahead and confirm that for us.
Yeah, I will go with Mr. Wembanyama himself. I mean, he already is, but I think he's going to take another huge step forward starting tonight. And I think we're going to have the Wemby takeover this year. So I'll be hopefully riding this train early and often. Wembanyama, the play of the night for me.
It's always good to be ahead of the curves in DFS, particularly NBA. So Victor Wembanyama, Travis, your play of the day. Seemed like you maybe have some contenders there that you're thinking through, but who's going to get the nod?
Yeah, getting the nod. I really do like getting exposure to that Mavs and Spurs game. There's a lot of ways to go about it. I just think Kyrie's underpriced at 7.5. I want to just play him. He's too good of a play. I think you can even play him with Luka. And I think some people would be like, I can only play one. I disagree. I think you can perfectly get away with playing both if you want to. I think Kyrie Irving at 7.5K, it's just underpriced at the shooting guard position. So give me Kyrie Irving as my play of the day.
And with Kyrie and Luka, you get access to really what is pretty much the entire offense for the Mavericks. Good matchup here against the Spurs. But that does it for the Up to Lock show. Enjoy the 4-game slate. Go ahead, get on playback. As Travis said, go ahead, create your account. Being there helpfully telling people that you do not need a Run Pure Sports membership to create your playback account. And check it out. Check the shows out with the boys. And maybe when you're done with that, you want to use code RPS15 to get yourself a Run Pure Sports membership. Get access to the Discord, access to the core plays, the playbooks, the heat maps. New for this year, new for 2024, the NBA Slate Builder, and of course the premium shows, which will be coming your way all throughout the NBA season, the rest of the NFL season. For Sweet Travis, for DC, I'm JT Hayes. Guys, good luck in your contests tonight.